Let's talk about the importance of pros and cons videos, and not just that you have to make them, not just what the pros and cons are, but why we make them. I want you to understand some of the methodology. So when I started my YouTube channel, I had like a list of videos I needed to make from this course I had bought. And it was like 25 videos, like you got to make these ones. And there was a lot of pros and cons on there. At first, this felt like really repetitive, and that felt like kind of uncomfortable. But now I see the value of it so much, and I implement that pros and cons structure into all kinds of stuff, and there's all kinds of different ways you can use it. But let's get into the methodology of it a little bit. So if you're starting to make YouTube videos for real estate, you probably have two videos that it's like you got to make these, and it's cost of living for your area and pros and cons for your area. And maybe you think of your area as a little smaller than it is to other people, so you're thinking like, I don't live in Tampa, but I'm making those videos for Tampa. It's a little more searchable, all kinds of things that apply there. So we'll come back to cost of living at some point, and I'll just kind of share some different ways that you could express that information. But right now I want to talk about pros and cons. And honestly, the cons are kind of the most important for a lot of reasons. One, they get the most clicks, they get the most kind of engagement and comments and things like that. But the cons also show something about you, and that's the most important piece. And the only reason that these are at the top of the list, cost of living and pros and cons, is because people are actually searching for them. There's tools you can use to know what people are searching for, but also, come on, you know that people are searching for these things. If you're going to move to an area, what are you going to search for? You're going to go to Google and type in cost of living of that area. You're wanting to know average rent. You're wanting to know very basic things like, what do jobs pay? Like, what does a nurse make in Tampa? Like, you're searching for those kind of things. And then you just want to see like basic comparisons. Like, what do people like? What do people not like? So with my channel, I have really specific values I have in mind that I'm portraying every time I make a video. And I use certain storytelling methods to communicate those values. But pros and cons communicates a lot of values too, and specifically the cons, like I said. Many people have a perception of realtors that they just gloss over all the negative things just to sell something. And that's kind of that like used car salesman vibe that realtors are often trying to escape from. So this is one way to keep from coming across that way, to build trust. Realtors always say that people work with those that they know, like, and trust. This is the know, like, and trust all combined. You're putting yourself out there, you're letting yourself be known. The way you're acting on camera is being likable, and then the points that you make is where you have the chance to gain trust. And cons gain more trust because they show that you're not scared to talk about negative things. And that whenever it comes down to it, you're going to point out the downsides for them and their transaction. You're going to protect them. You can be trusted by them to protect them from negative things because whether or not it's a negative to them, you're going to bring up the potential downsides. I actually have that documented as like one of the ways that we work with clients at my company. We always bring up the potential downside of every decision. And every decision does have a downside. And by just glossing over that and kind of whitewashing it and finding a way to rationalize your way out of that to get a commission, that's why people don't really trust realtors. And we have this obligation in real estate, I believe, to change the status quo. But the status quo will only be changed by people in the industry willing to be different and then willing to talk about how they're different and why they are different. For me to just be different quietly on my own and just close however many deals we close a year is one thing. But I want to teach you actually how to be different in the same kind of way. That's the impact I want to make on this industry, is actually changing the status quo of how we relate with potential consumers. I was at a listing the other day with a friend. It's actually his listing. It's like a $3 million house on the water. But the water is pretty to look at. You could put a kayak in. You could have a floating dock for jet skis. But you can't have a boat because it's too shallow. So I pulled out my phone, talking to my Instagram story. He wasn't in the video. Nobody knows it's his listing or what the address is. But I just started talking to the camera saying, check out this house, beautiful $3 million house on the water. The biggest thing, though, it's got this awesome dock that goes out into the water, but you can't have your own boat lift. That would be a major deal breaker for me. I showed him this video, and he was so, I could tell. He was, bothered that I said that about the house. Because he's thinking, how do I sell this one house? And I'm thinking, how do I show people that I can be trusted no matter what the scenario? And that's why pros and cons are so important. You're showing the things that you like or the things that everybody likes. And then you're showing the things that everybody complains about or the things that, stand out to you as like, I'm surprised by this, or I didn't know I was going to have to deal with this. There's so many different ways you can frame it. And sometimes the cons, they're not that bad. They're not actually that bad. So I talk about the bugs a lot in Florida. The bugs aren't that bad to a lot of people, but they're really hard for me to deal with at certain times of the year. And me just sharing that experience just shows people that I'm willing to talk about downsides of things. I'm willing to point out, hey, that road's going to be too loud, or that school's not good enough for what you're looking for. Like, those kind of things are really important to consumers, especially if they're moving across the country. And speaking of that, I've got to hop on a Zoom call with one of those customers, and I'll close up once I'm done with that. All right, I just finished that call with Ralph, and it just proves the point. There's things that Ralph likes and doesn't like, and he wants me to hear that and then help him find it. By talking about cons in a video, you're showing that you'll be able to do that, because when you have a buyer, it's different than when you have a seller. When you have a buyer, and most marketing, especially in videos like this, people moving across the country, is for buyers. But when you have a buyer, you want them to buy into you. And you need them to buy into you for all kinds of reasons. You want them to like you, and you want them to trust you. They know you because they're watching your video, but you want them to like you. You do that by telling stories, by being yourself, by having normal mannerisms like this. You get them to trust you by demonstrating how you think. And if you're not willing to talk about potential negatives, you're just not presenting yourself like a real person. So, I hope you found this useful. I would love any questions you have, any comments. I'm excited to help you all build these YouTube channels and just see where you take it.